course, you guys are doing Chicago Teen Edition coming up March 28th through the 30th at James Buchanan High School, which is obviously a spectacular classic. Now, is that the set that you guys have behind you guys right now?
Yes.
The display that's going on. I saw it. At first, I thought it was like a virtual background. And then as soon as I took a second look, I'm like, that I think is the set, which, by the way, is spectacular, which, I mean, Chicago in itself is one of those shows that you kind of have to go big or go home. So set the stage for us a little bit on Chicago for those that may not know the story, may not have seen the movie, may not have, seen the musical before or have heard the music of what Chicago is really about for somebody who may be totally, in the dark on Chicago.
So it kind of takes place in the 1920s whenever there's like huge on the like women killers, like kind of killer celebrities, where women would kill like their husbands or their lovers and then they get like famous. So the show is about one of those like lady killers named Roxy Hart who kills her lover and then ends up, it's like her story of trying to like get away with it and get out of jail without like getting hanged for the crime, and also turn it into like an instant fame scenario.
Gotcha. And how did it feel whenever you found out, Emmalyn, whenever you found out that you were going to get the chance to do Chicago as a musical, let alone play your role there in the show, but to get to do the show? Because I know Chicago is one of those where I feel like it falls under the category as not only dream roles, but dream shows. So whenever you got the word that, hey, we were getting to do Chicago, the Teen Edition, as our show for this year, what was your reaction?
Actually didn't know it as well as a lot of other people. So everyone else was like so hyped for it. And I was like, this sounds fun. I don't really know what this is about, but I bet it'll be fun. And then I went and did a lot of research on it and watched the movie. And I was like, this is really cool. I'm excited to do this. And I'm excited to do my role just because I get a lot of fun scenes or fun different interactions that I get to like do on stage.
Awesome. And Kristin, for directing, whenever you guys were kind of working together, I know year to year when you guys are picking out a show, there is, a bit of a process when you guys are thinking about what show to do, year after year. What inspired you guys to pick Chicago for the show for this year?
So when we're picking a show, we're trying to kind of guess of the students we know we're going to have to work with. We are hoping we can always recruit more and pull more in, but also we're trying to do something different than we've done before because we want our students to have a variety of different theater experiences when they're here at JB. The last musical we did was Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein. So this is definitely very different than that. And this is also a very dance-heavy show, which is something we haven't done before. We hired a choreographer to help us with this show because Luke and I love to direct, but we are not very strong dancers necessarily. So it's been really fun to have that new aspect of theater happening here at JB as well.
I love the Rodgers and Hammerstein to Chicago transition. It kind of reminds me of, it reminds me of like the Schmigadoon TV show on Apple TV Plus on how like you went from Schmigadoon to Schmicago basically from season 1 to season 2 in that perfect transition there. Really That's absolutely phenomenal. And for the students who kind of went from Cinderella to Chicago, what was that transition like from a rehearsal process, from working on a show like Cinderella, who, which obviously is that Rodgers and Hammerstein golden age, very, princess-esque, to another golden age musical that still, has that kind of Fosse kind of energy to it. What was that transition like of kind of working on, not necessarily polar opposite musicals, but very different styles of musical in a way?
Well, what's been neat about this, I'll go first and I'll let you take over. What's been neat about this is some of our students who are now at the high school participated in Cinderella as middle school students. So we've been able to kind of bring them up through too. It's been neat to see all of their growth. But I think one of the biggest challenges stylistically has been the singing style, because in Rodgers and Hammerstein, Cinderella, everything's very pretty. There's a lot more choral harmonies that we had to focus on and work on in that show. In this one, not every song is supposed to be pretty. So we're working a lot more on belting and just reminding them that this isn't supposed to be a pretty part of this song. They're angry. It's intense. So that has been an interesting new challenge for the students to take on in that transition. What do you think, since you got to act in both of them?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you were saying, just like the styles being very different, but also like one of the other big differences is just the involvement in it, because in Cinderella, like the ensemble isn't quite as important, so we were just like there to support the like leading roles, and they were really like on the stage like most of the show, just like really showing off. And not that the leads in Chicago don't do that, but there's like a lot of like ensemble involvement where like the ensemble just really makes the scene. Without them, it's not really the show. So it's just much more involved and much more like the ensemble role is much more important.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many different pieces to the puzzle that really makes Chicago, from the music to the acting to really, I mean, telling the story of Chicago, because it is a very, you know, at times very intense, at times very heavy, and at times incredibly entertaining. There's a lot of different moving pieces to it. And the sets and the design of it all is all very, you know, wild at many times. And you guys have a lot of student involvement with this production. Take me through that a little bit, because I know that with a lot of these all school productions, you know, that word there, all school production, really, you know, takes a front seat there, where a lot of the students are heavily involved in everything from the sets to the lighting and the sound to everybody there on the stage. So take me through kind of the student involvement with this production.
So we have 28 students in the cast for this show, and then we also have around a dozen working backstage as crew members, working on different things like building the sets, painting the sets, working on costumes, helping with hair and makeup. There's definitely a lot of involvement there. We also have a few students participating in pit orchestra this year, which is pretty cool. So it's maybe not the biggest show that we have done necessarily, but we are regrowing. So it's nice to see this many students come out and participate in lots of different ways.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I do think, not necessarily specifically for this show, but like student involvement, is that you guys let us make a lot of our own acting decisions. It's not like you being like, this is how this scene is going. It's like you kind of just give us some free reign to just experiment and try new things to try to really make the character our own, or really make the show our own. So it's not just like what you guys want always, it's like we get to have our touches in it as well.
Yeah. And how has it felt, your journey, Emmalyn, with this character? Because I know you had said, you know, from the very beginning, you know, when you found out about the show, you were like, it wasn't really, you know, a major Chicago person. You know, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, great. We're doing Chicago. And now, you know, you're kind of in this spot where, you know, you're 2 weeks away from taking that center stage right there. You know, how have you felt this journey has been of the process of putting together this character over the last couple of weeks and months, ever since, you know, the start of auditions up until opening night here coming up very soon?
Yeah, so when I had auditioned, I actually had auditioned for the lead. So when I ended up with getting Hunyak, I wasn't the most excited, but like I got to experience like all of the different scenes that I've gotten to like put together on stage has just made me like really appreciate the character and just the moments that I get, because I get to really like stretch myself as an actor, because there are scenes where it's like it's supposed to be humorous, so I get to use like a lot of like physical humor and use this character to make people laugh. But then also, like, one of the more heavier scenes, like, what's it called? The
Hungarian hanging.
The Hungarian hanging, like, just the change from being able to, like, make people laugh to, like, making people, like, watch and, like, it's a very intense scene of, like, this death, like, shown with, like, barely any sound on stage. Like, just being able to, like, two opposite sides of the spectrum, like, has been really cool to do and just experience.
And gosh, I got chills when we just said the name of your scene, because every time I watch her and her castmates act that scene out, it is so dramatically intense. And the way that they are performing it is chilling right in the middle of all this other razzle-dazzle, entertaining, jazz hands, dancey stuff. And plus she had to learn how to speak Hungarian.
I'm not very good at it.
Say your character doesn't speak English and you're the only innocent person that gets to complete.
Yeah, another point that Luke here brought up was that I don't speak like any English in the show. Like the one phrase I know is "not guilty," which is like kind of impactful because I'm the only innocent character in the show. Like I've been wrongly accused and imprisoned, and everyone else is super guilty. But like, like super
bragging about it.
Yeah,
guilty.
super guilty.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm innocent, and like the whole show, I'm just trying to like defend myself and like prove that I'm innocent, and it doesn't work out in the end, and they convict me anyway.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the heaviness of this show, while also being just such a, like you said, such a razzle dazzle, fun and just wild and crazy, just great show is what really makes Chicago such a unique production. And again, to be able to put it on, you know, on a high school stage and a high school level is just such a unique opportunity. And I'm jealous too, obviously coming from a background of doing, you know, performing arts school for 4 years in high school and doing a whole variety of different musicals. I also did a show where I had to learn a different language. I did, I think, Mandarin and Cantonese for a musical my freshman year. So it was a doozy to have to do all of that and learn like the language tracks and stuff that they gave you for some of those experiences and stuff. It is a bit of a time, but it's fun in the end. Trust me. But yeah, I mean, again, just watching all of this as looking at the background and seeing the set and everything, it looks like it is just going to be a spectacular time. And for people that are thinking about, trying to figure out what they're doing on that weekend of March 28th through the 30th, what would be your elevator pitch to people who are considering coming out to see Chicago Teen Edition there at JBHS?
I think that it's a really fun show. There's a lot of singing. There's a lot of dancing. All of these songs are ones that you can hum and that are going to get stuck in your head after you leave. The students have put in so much hard work. It's really something different than what we have done here in the past, which is really neat, is that it's just really fun. Your toes will be tapping, even with the heaviness sprinkled throughout. I go for all that jazz and the razzle dazzle.
Yeah. So. I would say kind of on that too, like it's a very unique show. Like you don't have a lot of high schools that are like able to do a show like Chicago. They kind of do more of like you're the Music Man or like My Fair Lady, and it's like the option to do this show that's just a very different genre and a very different like energy to it is just a unique experience that you might not get to experience in like another show. So, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's going to be an awesome time. Looking forward to it. Chicago Teen Edition, March 28th through the 30th, James Buchanan High School. It's going to be a great time. Best wishes for a great production.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.